There is a specific kind of silence that fills a house when you are no longer the master of it, but merely an occupant. It is a heavy, suffocating silence, the kind that presses against your eardrums and makes the beating of your own heart sound like an intruder's footsteps. I sat on the edge of my bed in the master suite, the room I had shared with my late wife for 40 years. It used to be a sanctuary, a place of warmth and quiet conversation. Now, it felt like a minimum security prison cell with better thread count sheets. My legs were heavy, anchored to the floor by the throbbing ache in my knees. 6 weeks ago, I had undergone a double knee replacement. I reached for the walker standing sentinel by the nightstand. My knuckles turned white as I gripped the aluminum handles. 1, 2, heave. I pulled myself up, grit my teeth against the sharp, hot spike of pain that shot up my thighs, and steadied myself. I was Henry. I was 74 years old. I was a retired structural engineer who had ensured the integrity of bridges that millions of people drove over every day. I dealt in load-bearing capacities and stress fractures. I knew exactly how much weight a structure could take before it collapsed. And as I stood there, listening to the muffled sounds of my son and his wife living my life downstairs, I knew the structural integrity of this family was already gone. They had moved in 3 months ago. To help, Michael had said, his eyes wide with feigned concern. "You can't manage the stairs, Dad. Jessica can cook. I can handle the bills." It sounded like love. It felt like a takeover. I shuffled to the door of the bedroom. I didn't open it. I just listened. The air in the hallway usually smelled of old oak and lemon polish, the scent of the house I remembered. Now it smelled of kale and chemicals. Jessica was blending one of her green sludges in the kitchen. Michael was vaping. The cloying sweet scent of blueberry mist drifted under the doorframe, masking the smell of my home with a synthetic fog. They were hosting another dinner party tonight. I knew this because I had heard Jessica on the phone earlier, ordering catering from a place I couldn't afford on my fixed income. I wasn't invited. I was the ghost in the attic, the necessary inconvenience attached to the real estate. I turned back to the room. I made my way to the dresser. I needed my watch. It was a 1968 Omega Speedmaster, the first thing I bought when I made partner at the firm. I kept it in the velvet-lined top drawer. I pulled the drawer open. Empty. My stomach dropped, a sensation far worse than the pain in my knees. I rummaged through the socks, the handkerchiefs. Nothing. I checked my wallet, which sat on the dresser. I opened the billfold. Yesterday, I had $200 in cash, emergency money I kept close. Today, it was empty. The door to the bedroom opened without a knock. Michael stood there. He was wearing a polo shirt that was too tight, trying to look like the tech entrepreneur he pretended to be, rather than the 35-year-old man who had borrowed money from me 6 times in the last decade. "What, Dad?" he asked, his tone clipped. "What are you doing?" "My watch," I said, my voice raspy from disuse. "The Omega." He didn't flinch. He didn't look surprised. He sighed, a long, exaggerated exhalation of patience being tested. "Dad, we talked about this," he said, walking over and putting a hand on my shoulder. It felt heavy, like a restraint. "You're misplacing things again. Dr. Evans said this might happen. Post-surgical cognitive decline. It's the anesthesia leaving your system." "I didn't misplace it," I said, looking him in the eye. "It was in this drawer, and the cash in my wallet." Michael chuckled, a sound devoid of humor. "You probably hid the cash, Dad. Remember last week? You thought you lost the remote, and we found it in the fridge? You're confused. It's okay." He was using big words to make me feel small. Cognitive decline. Confused. He was rewriting my reality in real time. "I want you to look for it," I said. "I will, Dad. I'll look for it later," he said, dismissing me. "Right now, Jessica and I are going to brunch. We need a break. This caretaking it's a lot." "Sure," I whispered. "Great. Stay in the room, okay? The stairs are dangerous today." He left. He closed the door. I heard the lock click. He locked me in.
Now, it was Tuesday morning. They were at brunch. The house was quiet. I sat in my wingback chair, the iPad in my lap. My hands trembled as I opened the app. I didn't want to see what I was about to see. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted Michael to be a good son who was just stressed. I wanted to be the confused old man they said I was. I scrolled back to the footage from the previous night. 8 p.m. The living room. The grainy black and white video flickered to life. I saw my living room. Michael was sprawled in it, his feet up on the coffee table, vaping. A cloud of white smoke hung in the air. Jessica was pacing, holding a wine glass. I squinted. It was the bottle of 1995 Bordeaux I had been saving for my 75th birthday. She was drinking it like it was grape juice. I turned the volume up. "He's knocking on the floor again," Michael said on the recording, rolling his eyes toward the ceiling, toward me. "He wants water, or the channel changed." "Ignore him," Jessica snapped, taking a large gulp of my wine. "If you go up there every time he whines, he'll never learn. God, Michael, he's just a burden, a heavy, expensive burden." I felt the air leave my lungs. A burden. "The lawyer says the trust fund vests in full if he's deemed incapacitated for 6 months, Michael replied, taking a drag from his vape. He looked relaxed. He looked comfortable in his betrayal. "We just need 3 more months. That's it." Jessica groaned. "I can't live like this for 3 months. "It's worth it, babe," Michael said. "Think about the payout. Once he's declared incompetent, we put him in that facility in Jersey, the cheap one, the state-run one. We don't need to waste money on a private home. He won't know the difference. Then we liquidate the house, we sell the lot." I watched my son blow a cloud of smoke into the air of the home I built for him, calculating the precise date of my disposal like I was expired milk. He didn't see a father. He saw a calendar entry standing between him and a payday. If you've ever poured your life into someone only to discover they were just waiting for you to empty out so they could crush the cup, hit that subscribe button. You need to see exactly how a burden handles a parasitic load. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was physical. It felt like the stitches in my knees were ripping open one by one. My own son, the boy I taught to fish on the pier at Santa Monica.
The teenager whose car insurance I paid even after he wrecked 3 sedans. The man whose debts I paid off quietly without telling his mother because I wanted him to have a fresh start. He wasn't caring for me. He was running out the clock. I wanted to throw the iPad across the room. I wanted to scream until my throat bled. But I kept watching. I needed to see the bottom of the well. On the screen, Jessica walked over to my desk in the corner of the living room. It was an antique roll top I kept locked, or thought I did. She opened it easily with a paperclip. She picked up a stack of mail. "The bank statement came," she said, ripping open the envelope. "He has more in the checking account than we thought." "Nice," Michael said, not looking up from his phone. Jessica asked, "We need to pay the lease on the BMW." "Easy," Michael laughed. It was a cruel, casual sound. His hand shakes anyway. If it looks wiggly, it looks authentic. I paused the video. I pinched the screen, zooming in. I saw Jessica hand him my checkbook, the one I thought was in the safe. I saw Michael take a pen. I saw him practice on a napkin first, laughing as he mimicked the tremor of my palsy. Then I saw him sign the check. He tore it out and handed it to her. She kissed him. "You're a genius," she said. "I'm a survivor," he replied. I put the iPad down on the bedspread. The grief hit me then, a tidal wave of sorrow that threatened to pull me under. I buried my face in my hands and wept. I wept for the little boy with the scraped knee who used to run to me for comfort. I wept for the man he had become. I wept for the wife who wasn't here to see this, thanking God she had passed before her heart could be broken like mine. But as the tears dried, they left behind a residue, a grit. It felt like salt and iron in my soul. I wiped my face with my sleeve. I looked at the walker. I looked at the door. I was not incapacitated. I was injured. There is a difference. One is a state of mind. The other is a temporary logistical problem. I wasn't confused. I was angry. And anger is a hell of a fuel. I picked up my phone. My thumb hovered over the emergency contact for the police. No. The police would come. They would take a report. Michael would talk his way out of it. He would show them the medical papers claiming I was confused. He would say I gave him permission.
It would be a civil matter. It would be messy. I didn't want messy. I wanted decisive. I wanted absolute.
I scrolled down my contacts list until I found the name I needed. Henderson, Frank, locksmith. Frank was my oldest friend. We had served in the reserves together. He had been changing locks in this city for 40 years. He knew every door, every tumbler, every bolt. And he hated thieves. I hit dial. Frank's voice was gravelly and warm. "The knees are fine, Frank," I said. My voice was steady. It didn't shake. It didn't waver. It sounded like the engineer I used to be. "I need you to come over, Frank, right now. I need a full retrofit. Front door, back door, garage. And I need the heavy-duty deadbolts. Henry, what's going on?" "Yes," I said, looking at the empty spot on the dresser where my watch used to be. "Someone broke in a long time ago." "I'm on my way, Frank," the tone of his voice shifting from friend to professional. "Park around the back. In the alley." I hung up. I looked at the time. 12:30 p.m. They would be at brunch for at least another 2 hours. Bottomless mimosas took time. I grabbed the walker. I stood up. The pain in my knees was still there, sharp and biting, but I pushed it into the background. I didn't have time for pain. I went to the closet. I pushed aside my suits, the clothes of a man who used to have a life. In the back, tucked behind a box of old tax returns, was my old military duffel bag. It was canvas, green, and smelled of dust. I dragged it out. I wasn't packing for me. I wasn't going anywhere. I dragged the bag into the hallway. I looked at the door to the guest room, the room they had taken over, the room that used to be my office. I opened the door. The smell of them hit me again. Vape juice and expensive perfume. I walked in. "Let's see how much you can fit in a bag, Michael," I whispered to the empty room. I started to pull his clothes off the hangers. I didn't throw them. That would be childish. I folded them. I folded them with the precision of a man closing a chapter of his life. I packed Jessica's creams. I packed the PS5 Michael had bought with my money. I packed it all. By tonight, the population of this house was going to drop by 2, and the only thing opening that front door would be my thumbprint. The camera focuses on Henry's hand, steady and firm, as he zips up the heavy canvas duffel bag. The sound of the zipper is loud in the quiet house, like the sealing of a body bag. He looks at the clock. 12:45 p.m. Fade to black. There is a distinct mechanical finality to the sound of a drill biting into a deadbolt. It is a violent noise, a grinding of metal on metal that screams of permanence. I sat in my wheelchair in the hallway, watching Frank Henderson work. Frank was 72, with hands that looked like catcher's mitts and a face carved out of granite. He didn't ask why I needed the locks changed on a Tuesday afternoon. He didn't ask why there were bruises on my upper arm, shaped exactly like my son's fingers. He just looked at the tumbler on the front door, spat into a handkerchief, and said, "I'll put in the Titan series." "Do it," I said. It was 1 p.m. The house was quiet, save for the whine of Frank's tools. The silence felt different now. It wasn't the oppressive, lonely silence of the last 3 months. It was the silence of a fortress preparing for a siege. While Frank moved to the back door, I began the second phase of the eviction. I rolled my wheelchair to the closet under the stairs and pulled out my old military duffel bag. It smelled of canvas and decades-old dust. I dragged it into the guest room, the room Michael and Jessica had commandeered 3 months ago. I pushed the door open. The smell hit me instantly. It was a mixture of stale vape smoke, expensive perfume, and entitlement. Their clothes were everywhere. Michael's shirts were draped over my antique reading chair. Jessica's makeup was sprawled across the dresser I had built with my own hands for my late wife. They had colonized my home like an invasive species, choking out the native memories. I didn't throw their things out the window. That would have been satisfying, but it would have been chaotic. I am an engineer. I appreciate order. I appreciate systems. I pulled a roll of heavy-duty black garbage bags from my lap.
I started with Michael's closet. I pulled his suits off the hangers, suits I knew he had bought with the credit card he stole from my wallet last month. I folded them roughly and shoved them into the black plastic. I grabbed his shoes, his collection of vintage sneakers that he spent more time cleaning than he did his own father, into the bag. I moved to the dresser. Jessica's creams, her serums, her jewelry box. I swept them all into a bag. The glass bottles clinked together, a fragile, expensive sound. I didn't break anything intentionally, but I didn't handle it with care. They were just objects. They were the trappings of a lifestyle they couldn't afford, financed by the slow draining of my life. I packed the PlayStation 5 Michael had bought for us to play together, which I had never touched. I packed the iPad that used to ignore me during dinner. I packed it all. It took me 2 hours. My new knees were throbbing, a dull, hot ache that radiated up my thighs, but I worked through it. The pain was grounding. It was real. It was better than the numbness I had felt watching that video feed this morning. When I was done, 8 bulging black bags sat in the middle of the room. They looked like trash. In a way, they were. I dragged them, one by one, to the front porch. I stacked them in a neat pyramid right next to the welcome mat. It was a monument to their departure, a shrine to the end of my patience. Frank finished the garage keypad at 4:30 p.m. He walked into the kitchen where I was drinking a glass of water, my hand trembling slightly from the exertion. "It's done, Henry," Frank said, wiping grease from his knuckles. "Biometric scanners are live. Your thumbprint is the master key. I wiped all the old codes." "Thank you, Frank," I said. "Send the bill to the house. I'll write the check myself." Frank paused. He looked at the bruising on my arm again. He looked at the bags on the porch visible through the window. "You?" he asked. His voice was low, dangerous. Frank had seen combat in places most people couldn't find on a map. "I can sit in the truck." "No," I said. "This is a family matter." "All right," Frank said. He put a hand on my shoulder. "But I'm leaving my tire iron by the door, just in case the lock needs." Frank left. I locked the new deadbolt behind him. It engaged with a solid, heavy thunk that resonated in my bones. I was sealed in. I went to the living room. I set up my command post. I positioned my wheelchair in the center of the hallway, facing the front door. The late afternoon sun slanted through the sidelights, casting long, golden bars across the floor. I placed the iPad on my lap. I connected it to the new Bluetooth sound system Frank had helped me wire into the doorbell intercom. It was a high-output speaker, designed to be heard over traffic. I waited. The sun began to set, turning the gold light to a bruised purple. It was 6 p.m. They would be coming back soon. Brunch would have turned into afternoon drinks. They would be loose, happy, confident in their ownership of my life. At 6:15 p.m., I heard the car.
The familiar purr of the BMW pulling into the driveway, the BMW leased in my name. I heard the engine cut. I heard the slam of car doors. Then laughter. "I'm telling you, the venue is perfect," Jessica's voice floated through the door, muffled but distinct. "We just have to get him to sign the papers on Friday," Michael replied. They were laughing at me. Even now, standing on my porch, they were laughing at the man they planned to discard. I watched the door handle. I saw the shadow of a key slide into the lock. It stopped. I heard Michael grunt. He twisted it. Nothing. The new cylinder didn't even acknowledge the old key. "Michael," Michael mumbled. "Wrong key, genius," Jessica said. "It is the right key," Michael snapped. He jiggled it. He pulled it out and jammed it back in. The metal scratched against the brass plate. "It's not turning," he said, confusion seeping into his voice. "It feels... Move," Jessica said. I heard the beep, beep, beep of the keypad. Then a harsh, low buzz. Error. The red light on the interior panel flashed. "You typed it wrong," Michael said. "I didn't type it wrong, Michael. 1, 2, 3, 4. She tried again. Buzz. Error. "The battery must be dead," Michael said. He sounded annoyed now. "Great, just great." He pounded on the door with the flat of his hand. The wood vibrated. "Michael," shouted. "Dad, open the door." I sat perfectly still. I took a deep breath. I pressed the button on the intercom app on my iPad. "The lock isn't jammed, Michael," I said. My voice was projected through the exterior speaker. It was crisp, loud, and amplified. It didn't sound like the voice of a confused old man. It sounded like a judge delivering a verdict. Silence on the porch. "Michael," called out, his voice pressing against the wood. "What are you talking about? Open the door." "It's changed," I said calmly.
the locks, the codes. What do you mean changed? Who changed them? I walked just fine, I said. Jessica's voice was shrill, piercing. What bags? Michael screamed. He kicked the bottom of the door. This isn't funny, I have to pee. You're a burden, Michael, I said. I let the words hang there in the cool evening air. Silence, absolute stunned silence. Jessica, whispered, close to the door crack. I looked down at the iPad. I opened the video file from the nanny cam. I turned the volume to maximum. I pressed play.
The sound blasted through the exterior speaker, echoing into the quiet suburban street. It was crystal clear.
God, Michael, he's just a burden. A heavy, expensive burden. How much longer do we have to do this?
The lawyer says the trust fund vests in full if he's deemed incapacitated for 6 months. We just need 3 more months. Then we put him in that facility in Jersey, the cheap one, and we liquidate the house. The audio played. I let it run. I let their own voices, dripping with malice and calculation, bounce off the neighbors' houses. I saw Mrs. Gable across the street step out onto her porch, clutching her cardigan. I saw the lights go on at the Miller's house next door. The recording ended. I played it again. Can you forge his signature on a check? Easy. His hand shakes anyway. Michael screamed. It wasn't a demand anymore. It was a plea, a terrified, desperate plea. He rattled the handle violently. Dad, turn it off! Turn it off! You're crazy! That was... I asked into the mic. Forging my signature is out of context? Michael's voice cracked. He sounded like he was 12 years old again, caught stealing from the cookie jar, but the stakes were his entire life. We were just talking. We were stressed. It was a joke. You love the inheritance, I corrected him. My voice was cold, stripped of all paternal warmth. I leaned closer to the intercom. I called the lawyer, Michael, an hour ago. The trust is dissolved. The house has been placed into a life estate. Silence. It means I own it until the day I die, I explained. And upon my death, it transfers immediately to the Wounded Warrior Project. You get nothing. Not the house, not the accounts. Jessica started screaming. She began banging on the glass panel of the door with her fists. You can't do this! We have rights! We live here! You are guests, I said. Oh, have you declared incompetent? I have the video of you practicing my signature, Jessica, I said. I have the forged check. The police have copies. The bank has copies. Jessica yelled at him. But Michael was silent. I switched the iPad view to the doorbell camera. I watched him. He had slumped against the doorframe. He looked broken. The arrogance was gone. The tech entrepreneur facade had crumbled, leaving behind a scared, Grady boy who had gambled and lost. He looked up at the camera lens. He stared right into it. Dad, he whispered, please, I have nowhere to go.
We gave up the apartment. We have debt. You were going to leave me in a facility in Jersey, I said. You were going to liquidate my home. I paused. Your bags are on the porch, I said. I packed them myself. I folded your shirts, Michael. You have 5 minutes, I said. 5 minutes to take your trash bags and leave my property. If you are still here in 5 minutes, the police arrive. As if on cue, the wail of a siren cut through the evening air. It was distant, but getting closer. Michael's head snapped up. He looked at the street. He looked at the pile of black garbage bags stacked next to him. The realization washed over him. This wasn't a negotiation. This was an execution of his status. Grab the bags, Michael said to Jessica. His voice was hollow. Jessica shrieked, No! Michael yelled at her, grabbing a handful of black plastic. He has the check. He has the video. If we're here when they pull up, we're arrested. He threw a bag at her. She caught it, stunned. Michael grabbed 2 bags, then 2 more. He dragged them down the steps, stumbling, almost falling. He looked pathetic. He looked like the garbage he was hauling. Jessica stood there for 1 second longer, glaring at the camera, mouthing a curse word. Then she grabbed her bag, the one clinking with her expensive creams, and ran after him. They shoved the bags into the trunk of the BMW. They threw them into the back seat. They were frantic, terrified rats fleeing a sinking ship. I watched on the monitor. I saw Michael look back at the house one last time. He looked up at the window of the master bedroom, where he thought I was sleeping. Then he looked at the camera. He didn't see a burden. He saw the father who raised him. He saw the man who built the roof he was standing under. He saw the man he had underestimated. The sirens grew louder. Blue lights flashed at the end of the block. Michael jumped into the car. He gunned the engine and peeled away from the curb, leaving tire marks on the asphalt. They were gone. I sat there in the hallway for a long time. The house was silent. The smell of vape juice was fading, replaced by the clean, cool air seeping in from the drafty windows I hadn't bothered to fix. I rolled my wheelchair back to the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water from the tap. My hand shook slightly as I lifted it to my lips, not from palsy, but from the adrenaline crash. I drank. The water was cold and clean. I was alone. My son was gone.
My heart was broken in a way that no surgeon could fix. The silence in the house was heavy, but it wasn't oppressive anymore. It was mine. I looked at the front door. The blue light of the high-tech smart lock glowed in the dim hallway, a beacon of security. For the first time in 3 months, I didn't have to lock my bedroom door. For the first time in 3 months, I was safe in my own home. I picked up my phone. I opened my contacts list. I hovered my thumb over the delete button. "Goodbye, son," I whispered. I tapped the screen. The contact vanished. The camera focuses tight on the blue LED ring of the smart lock on the front door, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. The view pulls back to show Henry sitting in his recliner in the living room, a glass of water in his hand, staring at the blank screen of his phone. Outside the window, the red and blue lights of the police cruiser pass by slowly, painting the walls in flashes of color, before fading into the night. Fade to black.